Hello everyone. Today for your horror reading pleasure, we have demons, we have vampires, we have an incredibly frightening haunted house. All the things you will love about horror are going to be compiled into these 3 books in this video, and I can't wait to tell you all about them. But as always, I want to remind you that I have horror books for sale. They're only $1 each. They're the ones you see on the screen, and there's a link down below if you want to purchase any. All right, let's get started. So the first book I want to talk about today is called Post-Haste Manor by Jolie Tumajan and Carson Winter. This is probably one of the best haunted house books I've read in a very, very long time. It is just fantastic. It's basically set in this house called the Post-Haste Manor, and we'll find out how it got that name sometime in the book. But one of the characters describes this house in a perfect way, I think. And I'm paraphrasing here. This isn't an exact quote from the book. But one of the characters says something to the effect of, it isn't a house. It's an evil wrapped in the skin of a house. Like, it's not really a haunted house. It's just something evil using the house as skin. Something to that effect. It was, and I think that's about accurate, because this is a very, very evil house. And this book is divided into 2 sections. And in the first section, we are going to hear some stories and rumors and legend about this house from different characters. But basically, it concerns 2 people who have each purchased and live in this house in Post-Haste Manor at different times. One of them, his name is Otho. Otho went there specifically because of all these stories and because of all the legends surrounding it, that it's supposed to be haunted. This is why he was interested in purchasing and living in this house. And he's nothing if not an optimist, because the rumors about this house are absolutely horrifying, and he decides that's why he wants to move in. And the house will decide if it wants to let you live there or not. Trust me on that. He moves there with the intention of an idyllic kind of life. He wants to meet his neighbors. He wants to have the neighborhood barbecues. He wants to eventually marry and have children, bringing them up in the house. He considers himself kind of a hero for doing this because of the rumors about the house. But when he goes out to meet the neighbors, he realizes the neighbors are not so friendly toward him. They seem to have an actual hostility toward him. And they're not really a close-knit neighborhood. They don't really talk to one another either. And but this does not stop Otho, because he is a very optimistic guy. He thinks any interaction is good. He's kind of lonely, you know, so he's looking for new friends and a way to fit into that neighborhood. He hangs out in this one creepy room in the house that has that one wall is like, on it is just painted this horrible looking face with the windows for eyes. And he talks to it, and he eats in front of it, and things start getting a little creepy. And we're going to find out what happens to Otho there. This Otho is in the 90s, is where his part of the story takes place. And where you're going to read about why that is significant later. And then there's Adira. Adira is a woman who is running away from her abusive relationship. She's been secretly hoarding away money from this man who's getting more and more violent. And she decides to move to Post-Haste Manor at a separate time than Otho, because when her abusive boyfriend was a child, something traumatic happened at that house, because everybody knows the rumors about this house, that nobody ever comes out of there, at least alive. But something traumatic happened to him. It's something that he doesn't want to talk about. And he is scared senseless of that house. He will drive out of his way not to even go near the neighborhood where this house is. So she decides to move in there to get away from him, thinking that he will not even come near the house to try to find her, even if he finds out where she lives. But eventually he does. And his need to control and manipulate her is stronger than his fear for this house. But like I said, this house accepts who it wants to, and it will take care of its own. And once he steps foot inside of that house for only the 2nd time in his life, well, The house has ways of dealing with him, and what happens to him is this is going to terrify you, especially certain people who have an aversion to some things. This is going to absolutely freak you out what happens to him. And these two stories are included in the first half of the book, but then the second half, it really ramps things up because we'll hear about these are almost like short little stories, all dealing with former residents and people that lived and owned post-haste Manor. And we'll hear about their horrible endings or endings of their loved ones or other people who came into the house that the house did not accept. And running through this book is some really dark but very humorous situations with some of these characters that kind of gives it a little bit of levity, but then not a lot, because this is actually one of the most frightening, freaky, weird horror books I've ever read. And I absolutely loved it, and I can't recommend it enough. And you can pre-order your copy. It's coming out on the 13th, I believe, so just about a week away. And pre-order link is in the description. I highly recommend Post-Haste Manor. And next we have Vampire Ventures by Linda Ann Losciavani. I hope I pronounced that correctly. She is really bringing back this lore and legend of the vampire. This is a book of 19 poems, each of them varying in length and different poetic styles, but you can tell she is very passionate about the subject matter, because that echoes through when you're reading it and the impact that it has on you. I mean, if you think about it, vampires have been kind of oversaturated, they've kind of been done to death, they've kind of been taken away from their original source material, I guess you can say, and turned into something they shouldn't have been. And authors like this are really putting their heart and soul into bringing back that old school vampiric legends and lore. You know, the slightly twisted romantic angle filled with the terror and dread that vampires should bring. Because if you think about it, vampires are undead humans who can turn into bats, and they want to take your blood to live on. They want to dig into your veins with their teeth and drink up all of your blood. How much more terrifying can a creature be? But we become a little bit desensitized to that legend, and it's great when you see somebody trying to bring that back. And this collection is so fantastic. I can't say enough good things about it. It's a shorter read. I mean, the entire book is like 45, 50 pages, something like that. But this is one you'll want to read multiple times, because I've read it twice already, and the second time I saw some passages, I saw some lines that caught my attention more than I did on the first read through, and really sent a whole new feeling of chills up my spine when you realize the subject matter. And these ones are set in all different times and locations, which is the fantastic part, because we have some old school vampire tales going all the way back to the days of Dracula, you know. And that one starts off with The Vintner's Daughter is the name of that first poem. But the ones I really like are the ones that she has set in modern times, because that is a great concept to think about. If vampires were real, and their legend and their bloodlines have lived on, and they are now in modern times, how would they operate in this world? We are in a world of you know, cell phones and computers and constant surveillance and cameras everywhere. And while you might be thinking, well, yeah, but they can't be seen on cameras, and you'd be correct. Imagine somebody taking a video on their phone of a person being attacked by a vampire, and then when they look back, the vampire is not there. It's just the other person. That would be a big kind of warning sign there, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. So I think vampires would have to operate using the technology of today. You know, they would have to use cell phones. They would have to use dating apps. They would have to use messaging services. And some of these stories, like the one that takes place like in a college, that's perfect, because I think vampires would love that environment. You got all these young, kind of vulnerable people who are in their beginning stages of adulthood. This is their first time out on their own, and they're going to do some very foolish things. They're not going to give things much thought. They're experiencing true freedom for the first time away from their parents. And what better place for a vampire to cement his legacy and live a very long time than with people who don't give much thought to what they're doing, putting themselves in very dangerous situations. That theme is explored. There's also another one about this girl who's on a dating app, and she is messaging a man only known as Mr. D. He claims to be from Romania, and he's saying all the right things that, that she thinks about, all these things that bring up ideas of romance and glamour and everything. But he also says some other things that are kind of cryptic and should be big red flags. But again, just like with the first story, which is set in the late 1800s called The Vintner's Daughter, this idea of people so enamored by love, they are in love with the concept of love, that they might subconsciously ignore these little red flags in hopes that this could be the one, this could be a start of something new for them, because everybody's looking for that perfect romantic partner. And this is a perfect place for a vampire to operate. And in that story, she certainly does that. She ignores some big red flags. And she is either willfully or unwillfully disengaged in some of the things he's saying that should be impossible, or at least put up a little hesitation, let's put it that way. And there are other stories in here about what if Dracula wrote a memoir. This is just a great, fantastic collection that brings the creepiness and the terror and the chills of what a vampire should be. Whether we're talking about in the 1800s, or we're talking about in modern times, and it's just fantastic. It absolutely will rekindle your interest in the vampire genre. And if more books were like this, I think it would be a bigger subgenre than it is now, because of all the ways people have tried to manipulate it and change it over the years. This just goes back to that old school, very thrilling, very chilling core of what a vampire is and what they should be. And I cannot recommend this book enough. There is a pre-order link in the description. This will be paperback only, but I think that's great because this is going to look great in your collection. And like I said, it's one you're going to want to read multiple times because it is short, it's right to the point. These different styles of poems will grab your attention. They're very emotive, very well told. And I have a great deal of respect for poets because they do something, they have this art form, and I just do not have that talent. But this one, certainly, she has a talent for it. And that's evident in this collection. Can't recommend it enough. Check out the pre-order link and be sure to pick up your copy of Vampire Ventures. And finally we have, The Black Lord by Colin Hinckley. This one just came out, and this one is fantastic. This is about a family who has a missing child. There's a boy named Eddie, and his brother Danny, his little brother Danny, disappears one night. And each of the family members, him, his mother, and his father, are handling it in different ways, although not together. Like his father is reliving a trauma of something that happened to his brother back when he was a child. And their mother seems to be almost catatonic. She just sits and stares, as if she's waiting for her son to just magically reappear, or somehow she can get some closure on what happened to her son. And Eddie himself, he's going through something that he doesn't really have a way to explain to his family. There's a mysterious, creepy figure outside of his window, scratching and knocking to get in and telling him that we have Danny. Danny is fine and alive, and if you want to see him again, if you want to help him, well, all you got to do is open the window and let me in. Now, we all know in a horror book, that is a horrible idea, but with this young boy, well, he might not know any better. So this book deals with that grief of a missing child in these through these characters in these different ways. But because they're not handling it together, this could cause some very serious consequences, because Eddie's grandmother knows some deep, dark family secrets. And these secrets could be something that, if they can't get their stuff together and come together as a family, there's this curse that the family's been fighting for generation after generation, and they just might lose the safety from this curse because of this event, letting loose eldritch creatures. That would be horrific, not just for the family, but for the rest of humanity perhaps as well. This novella is filled with all that kind of stuff. It's filled with family drama, it's filled with grief, it's filled with that dread, that creature outside the window scratching to get in, promising you the moon and the stars and everything you want. But do you let it in, or don't you? And it's very effectively creepy, extremely terrifying in some places, and I just absolutely loved it. This was a great folk horror novella filled with eldritch horrors, and it's something you definitely want to read. And I will leave a link down below where you can pick up your copy right now through Amazon, and I highly recommend it. And as always, I want to say thank you for taking some of your time and spending it here with me. And until we meet again, keep reading spooky, my friends.